Hi, everyone. This is Michele Graglia.
This is Marianne Hogan.
Hi, I'm Adrian McDonald.
I'm Katie Asmith.
Hi, this is Anthony Gasals.
Hi, my name is Meg Morgan.
Hey, it's Jordan Trove.
This is John Ray.
This is Ryan Van Duzer, and you are listening to the Gotta Run Racing Podcast.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, we're back with another Gotta Run Podcast. I'm Norm.
And I'm Jody,
your host. And thanks so much for everyone who likes and shares our podcast and anyone who tells a friend.
Yes, we really appreciate it because it does make a big difference.
It sure does.
In fact, our guest today found our podcast through a share.
That's right.
So it makes a big difference.
And we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for throwing a couple bucks per month in the tip jar. Keeps the lights on. So what an awesome weekend we had.
Yes, last weekend of summer, not officially, but as far as things go, and it was Island Lake Classic on Monday.
Pretty good. Good turnout. Everyone had a good time.
Yeah, the fun race. And now we're focusing on our own adventures for September. We both have some races coming up. You're heading off to Alberta pretty soon.
Oh my God. Running the coolies. They say coolies, but I'm sure it's going to be very hot, so it should be the hotties.
Oh,
where did I come up with these jokes?
I don't know.
Hey, listen.
You should have warned me about that one.
If you think I'm a funny guy, hey, say, hey, Norm, you're a funny guy.
Oh my gosh. This is off the rails.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Who's on the podcast today?
Today we have Gareth Jones. So we first heard about Gareth about 5 months ago when I think I found a video.
Yes.
Came across my feed called Ultra Runner Charged with Attempted Murder.
Right, because I was working out and you said, hey, look at this video. I was like, wow, that's quite the title.
Well, it definitely caught our attention. So we watched it and it described how he was addicted to drugs as a youth and got into some trouble, whatnot. And then he completely changed his life around. Fast forward, though, to Swiss Alps 100, which just ended. And we got a DM from someone who completed the race and wanted to share their story. And when you know, it was Gareth. What are the odds?
It's funny how the universe makes this happen.
It sure is. Well, as we say in our tagline, every runner has a story. So if you've got a good story, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Gareth is 34. He's Welsh, father of 3, a physical instructor in the army, and a mental health advocate. He's only been running a very short period of time since the pandemic when he joined a Facebook group, and the group's goal was to run 50 miles in the month of January to stay motivated during the winter. He ended up doing that in one day.
Yep, that sounds like an ultra runner to me.
Sure does. And shortly thereafter, he upped the ante and ran a 200-miler for charity, and then a 300-miler, and then over 600 miles in 12 days running from Scotland to Wales.
Crazy.
Wow. Hold on to your running shoes, folks. This is going to be a good one. In fact, we're going to split it into 2 parts. So here's part 1.
Coming up. Welcome, Gareth, to the podcast, and big congrats on finishing the Swiss Alps 100. Not an easy course.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, before we get to Swiss Alps, thank you for reaching out to us. It's kind of funny because we actually did come across you somehow on social media about 5 months ago when you did a podcast with another host about your incredible story. But we're wondering, how did you find us? Because you reached out to us. So how did you come across our podcast?
I think I seen you on the Swiss Alps 100 site on the Instagram page, or someone tagged you in something. And I checked out your page and I was like, you know, it'd be really cool to be on a podcast with Canadians. I was like, that'd be awesome. So that's why I reached out to you then. Because, you know, I love doing podcasts, but sometimes they get a little bit laborious, you know. But so I thought, you know, it'd be really good to do it with someone that you know, is in a different country, really doesn't understand. And yeah, that's why I reached out to you.
Love it. Well, every runner has a story is our tagline. So we're going to find out yours now.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
Yeah, so let's give our listeners a bit of a background. Let's go back to when you had this drug addiction and trouble with the law, and how you turned yourself around. So let's go back to when all that started with your drug addiction. We'll start from there.
Yeah, so my drug addiction started when I was around about 13, 14 years old. I lost my stepfather when I was significantly younger, so I was around about 9, 10. He committed suicide through being an alcoholic, and unfortunately there wasn't enough help back then for him. So that kind of planted the seed in my head. And then going on, my grandfather passed away, who was another father figure in my life. And I think that was the extra drip I needed in the bucket. And, you know, instead of, now I look at it, I'd slowly empty that bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I kicked the bucket over and was like, I'm done with this, and turned to drugs. And then for 10 years, I was in and out of the jail cell, fighting violence, addicted to cannabis first, just like a lot of people are, which led me on to heavier and stronger things. Eventually, a massive amphetamine addiction, which seen me beg, borrow, steal, and owe a lot of people money, essentially.
What was your school life like? Was there anything in school that you were passionate about, whether it be athletic or academics?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I loved cross country in school.
Really?
I loved doing sports. I loved cross country. I loved rugby. You know, I loved playing football. I loved it all. But the issue was I was quite overweight. So in school, I was always fluctuating between 16.5 to 18 stone. I was a bigger lad. So every time I'd attempt to do something, it always brought it always brought me attention because I was this fat lad, basically. And I could handle my own. So like, I'd always stick up for myself. But what the bullies didn't realize was the words do hurt. And when you go home, when you're at home in the night and you look in yourself in the mirror and you think, I just want to be someone else. I want to be this. And, you know, you're trying to compete with these guys, and being a bigger lad, it was quite difficult, you know. But I always had the passion there. I always had that fire inside me for something. And then I think when I lost a bit of weight and I went through like my eating disorder phase and battled all that, and now I found running, I look back and I do actually think it was in me all along.
Can you talk about some of the dark times about your drug abuse? We really want to understand how deep you really dived into that whole 10 years of your life.
Yeah, so the last, I always kind of held a job together. I always kind of held a life together, which was the darkest part, because I kind of fooled everyone. Everyone knew on the weekend, they think, yep, he's doing drugs again, because I'd go out and I'd party till the early hours. But then it was from a Monday to the Friday. That was the moment where people didn't realize. But the case is, I was waking up in the morning, every morning, going to buy £10 worth of amphetamine or speed, I'm not sure what you call it over there, and 10 grams of cannabis to help me sleep in the night. And this was a vicious cycle. You're talking for about 5-6 years. I do this every single day, to the point of my mother thought I was off my face when I was straight.
Oh,
you know, and I'd do anything to get money to go and score. I mean, I was always quite respectful, so I wouldn't walk down the street and steal off people, steal handbags and stuff like that. But I do everything in my power to get money. Like, I'd borrow off everyone until I owed the world the money. I took advantage of my nan, who would just give me money. Like, I'd say it was for something else. I even used my nan to take me to fetch drugs. I used to say to her, oh, will you take me to get some tobacco? Cheap tobacco. And I'd come away from the drug dealer's house with sometimes thousands of pounds worth of drugs on me in my nan's car. And now I look back and I think that is very wrong. you know, quite a dangerous game, you know. And as it went on, and And I actually thought to myself, I'm quite good to this drug thing. So I started selling drugs. I'd go out on a Friday, Saturday evening. I'd be wearing a bum bag and I'd have amphetamine in one side. I'd have pills in another side and cannabis and pot in another pocket. And I'd just be taking money off people, and the more people were getting drunk, the more money I was getting. And then I used to stay awake. I think the longest I stayed awake was about 7 days.
Oh.
Just little cat naps, little cat naps here and there. But my mind wasn't my own. I probably spent a lot of the time hallucinating. I was very paranoid. And it was just, it's all quite a blur. And now I look at it like the times I woke up in the gutter. There was actually one time I woke up in the gutter, a taxi driver picked me up in the snow and I had no clothes on. Didn't know where my phone was, didn't know where my wallet was, nothing. I had no recollection of how I got there. I think back now and I'm like, maybe that should have woke me up, But I probably went out the same night and done exactly the same thing. I think the scariest thing is now, I don't know about yourselves or anyone you know, but it's easy for people to say, yeah, just put them times behind you. Stop thinking about them times and everything. But I could be driving my car or I could be sitting there with my daughters or my wife or anyone. And then all of a sudden I'd have this feeling about when I pinched enough for a joint off my friend when he went out the kitchen. And it makes me feel sick that I was that low and I was that much in need and I do them things. For me, that was like the darkest time because he actually caught me pinching off him as well, and I lost all my friends through it. So that wasn't very good.
And when did you actually hit rock bottom? When was the time you decided that's it, enough is enough?
When I got arrested for attempted murder.
Yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, that was like the icing on the cake for me. It was kind of two occasions, actually. The first occasion, I hit rock bottom and I thought, this is enough for me. But that was me talking about life in general. I literally I think that was the first time and possibly one of the only times where I really contemplated taking my own life. And it was because I had stayed awake for, again, a few nights. My mates come to pick me up and we went out. I was in no fit state to go out. And we started chucking the beers down us, doing cocaine. And the next thing I remember was being dragged out of my house in handcuffs. I honest to God, I can't remember anything from having a line of cocaine in a pub and then being dragged out. But what had happened was I had got taken home in a taxi again, fell asleep on the settee. And because I hadn't slept for days on end, when my mother tried to wake me up to put me up to bed, I hit my mother because I didn't know who she was.
Right.
It wasn't a punch or anything like that. It was like a push, apparently, like, get off me. I can't remember it. Obviously, I spent the next day in the cell then. And I think that was the first rock bottom for me. And I come home and I remember walking up to a cliff and it all sounds very drama-like now, you know. But I remember ringing my mother and I was like, if you don't forgive me now, I'm going to jump off this cliff. And what a position to put my mother in, you know.
My goodness.
But then times passed and everything, and I done everything in my power to make it up to my mother. And I think one of the reasons I would never even take my own life, and I felt bad for even saying that to her, was because of what she went through with my stepfather. That was always on my mind. But then as times went on, I still didn't really learn my lesson. I was still doing drugs. And then an incident occurred where one of my friends had died 12 months previously. And it was his birthday. And we were walking past the flat where my friend, he overdosed in this flat. He got taken to hospital in the ambulance. He was fine. He signed himself out of hospital. And when he was walking home, and it's quite a long walk through like dark roads, country roads, he got hit by a car and died.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez.
Now, the people that he was bothering with that night we didn't like. They were what we refer to as junkies. Even as a drug user back then, I called them druggies. We didn't bother with that kind. They were heroin addicts and vice versa. Okay, I was no better than them, but that was just how we seen them. So when I'm walking past their house and they're in there partying and living the best life they can, I decided to take it upon myself to do something about it, thinking I was this rock star, with cocaine up his nose, I could take on the world. So I went in there and I smashed windows. I beat some people up and I smashed a window with my fist as I was leaving. Now, this is the funny part, because if there is a funny part, but by me smashing that window saved my life in a way, and I'll get to that, because I went home that night then. I remember showering. I remember scrubbing my hands with bleach and everything because I was so paranoid, get the blood off me. And 6 months later, in the space of 6 months, I met my now wife. I was still on drugs. She's a good girl. Never smoked, hardly drinks, very much a good girl. And I thought I could sort my life out here. And things were going well. I was planning on coming off the drugs and everything very slowly. But then I remember sitting down my nan's garden. A knock came at the door. I was just lighting up a spliff to listen to the rugby on the radio. I answered the door and it was 2 police officers and I knew them. And he was like, "We're sorry to do this, but we're arresting you for attempted murder."
Wow.
And my heart sunk. I didn't know why. 6 months had passed. They let me keep my phone in the car as we were driving over to the police station to make my last phone calls and everything. But as it turns out, they had my DNA off the window. So when I smashed the window, they had my DNA off that. It took months for the DNA results to come back. And the 6 people that were in the flat, they made up stories. Don't get me wrong, the stuff I done wasn't good, kicking, punching, all that stuff. But they tried saying I tried setting them on fire and worse things as well, which I know I didn't do. I was quite honest with what I'd done. And the police, or my solicitor, said to me after spending 18 hours in the cell, he said, "Right, just tell your story, stick to your story, because your story matches 2 of theirs, but 4 of them have made stories up." So I was like, okay. And my attempted murder charge dwindled down to criminal damage.
Wow.
And a fine. But I was sitting in that cell and I remember looking down at my microwavable meal and the smoke and thinking, I can't spend 20 years in prison, because everything was going through my mind, and that for me was rock bottom. That was the icing on the cake. And I was like, I got to do something about this. And I think that's why my wife came into my life at that time. And then I think that was someone saying to me, I don't believe in bigger forces above and everything, but things do happen. And that definitely happened to me, for as if to say this is what can happen, sort yourself out kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. How much time between that incident and then you picking up running? Hey everyone, we've been testing out a product that's new to us on our long runs lately called Caffeine Bullet. And we wanted to share this brand with you guys because it could be a real game changer. I'm training for my very first 24-hour race and I've never run through the night before, so I'm a bit nervous about it. Product is called Caffeine Bullet. It's out of the UK and it was created by David Hillard, host of the award-winning Bad Boy Running podcast.
Isn't he the announcer for Golden Trail Series?
He sure is.
Oh.
All right, so they have a few different levels of caffeine chews. I'm just going to highlight a few for you today. They have the chocolate orange, which is 85 milligrams of caffeine, which is about the same as a cup of coffee. They have the mint tense energy chew, 100 milligrams per chew, which is the same as, let's call it an espresso. Then they also have one that I'm really excited to try. It's the Ginger Roars Vegan Chew. It's about 33 grams, same as about a third of a cup of coffee. But what's interesting is the ginger element, because sometimes you have issues with your stomach. And speaking of that, they're almost an instant energy boost because the caffeine is chewed in your mouth and it's absorbed quicker because it actually bypasses your stomach and it kicks in 3 times faster than gels.
Wow.
I know, right?
Sign me up.
Right? So it gives you that boost of energy exactly when you need it. They're also individually wrapped, which is great because you can store them in your vest or in your pocket and access them quickly when you need it. You can order them online. They ship from North American warehouses. And if you use our link, our Gotta Run podcast listeners will get 20% off.
Whoa.
Pretty good, right?
I like it.
We've posted the links in the show notes for your convenience. And hey, if you've tried them, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, check it out.
Oh, so I joined the military then. I went through, when I was coming off the drugs, I developed a self-diagnosed eating disorder where I lost a lot of weight. I put weight on when I come off the drugs, and then I was losing weight, and I come down from 18 stone down to about 13, 12 stone.
Wow.
So long story short, I was quite in a bad place with my nutrition, and I do everything I could. I was starving my body, and I was running. I was going to the gym to lose weight just to get fit enough to join the military, really. And then after about a year and a half passed after I lost the weight and like kind of gained control again of my diet and the awful habits I had taken up to lose weight, I didn't necessarily start running then.
Mm-hmm.
I was running about 10K a week or 15K a month, something like that, just taking over and going to the gym. I joined the military, so obviously that helped with my fitness. But it wasn't until lockdown 3 years ago, this week actually, where I officially started. I ran my longest distance, and it was 6 months. So 3.5 years ago, I decided to start running, and my first run was like 5K, week later 10K, and just built up. And then 6 months later, I got on the train with the backpack on and decided to run home 200 miles.
Now, you're on the right podcast because ultra runners understand what you just said. But if anybody else were to listen to that, they may think otherwise.
Yeah. Trust me, I get that a lot when I turn to people, and it was during lockdown, so everyone was depressed, and this is the reason I done it, I was the same. I was sent home from work, we were all there twiddling our thumbs. I'm not very academic, so I couldn't teach the kids how to read or write. What else could I do? So I started running, and then I said, I'm going to run the length of the country. And the amount of people that said, you can't do that. You're off your head. You can't do that. I was off my head 8 years ago when I was doing drugs. What's the difference now? Drugs control me then. Now this is my chance to prove to myself. I control what I do. I control my actions. And I got to be honest, the amount of people that said I couldn't do it, and it probably crossed my mind as well a few times, but I wouldn't let it in. Once I come public with it and said, I'm going to do this run, that was it. And I remember sitting on the train, going up to the start point. It was pouring down with rain, and I was thinking, bloody hell. I was on the train like 5-6 hours, and I was thinking, I got to run all this. Am I okay, And the furthest I had run in one go before that was 52 kilometers.
And this was going to be 200 miles.
Well, it was only supposed to be 170 miles.
Okay.
So there's a route called the Offers Dyke,
mm-hmm.
and it runs down the centre of Wales and England. It's like a boundary line. Mm-hmm. And I got about 3/4 of the way down, and I was doing it self-supported. I was very, very strict on that. But it got to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I had hardly eaten. Mm. I was jumping over people's gardens for water. Again, I was borrowing and stealing. But So I come around the corner one day, and my auntie was waiting there in the car for me, and she said to me, she was like, "You can't do this on your own." I was very much relieved. I was very much relieved, even though I was still strict with the self-supported thing. I wanted to carry my bag. She was there to help me, and we got, I don't know, I got to a point on the route where I could either carry on going, and I could have finished the Offers Dyke in about, I think it was about 41 miles I had left, and probably would have been done in that day. Or I could have turned right and gone home, which added on an extra 20 odd miles. For some reason, because people kept telling me, they kept ringing me and messaging me, "I think you've had enough now. You've proved your point.
Aww.
You need to stop. You need to do this." Even though people were very supportive, okay? People were very supportive. I got to give that to them. How the words of people can get you through things is incredible, okay? But I got to this point on the route, and I turned to Matt and went, "I'm going home." And she went, "I think that's a good idea. Come on, get in the car." And I went, "I don't think you understand. I'm going home." And I took the bag off. I give her the bag. I went, "I'm done." And we went right. And I went over the Black Mountains in Wales, and we spent another 2 days on the road to get me home, and it took the tally up to 200 miles.
Wow.
But it was something in my head that I had come from that length, come from North Wales, and I just really wanted to get home. There was something about it, and I hobbled home. There was no running, there was no walking. I think I had two stress fractures in my feet.
Oh.
By the end of it, I was in a world of hurt.
I'm sure.
But the will of people, and I guess I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like the past give me this power to not give in to like demons, really, and give in to that control your mind has over you, the negative control. I was like, yeah, I'm not having that today.
Well, I wonder, by comparison, you are now at a point where you could control, even though your body was hurting, you were of clear mind, and you could control what was going on in your mind, where in your past, it was sort of the opposite, right? Because you let the drugs allow whatever was happening to happen. So now that you're clear mind, yes, you're in pain, but you knew that your mind was what was going to get you there no matter what.
Yeah, yes, it's very much that. Because I look back, and I guess other drug users, drug addicts will tell you as well, you're fully controlled by something else. One, you're controlled by the addiction, you're controlled by the drugs, but you're controlled by this voice inside your head that just keeps telling you, you need to get this, you need to get this, you need to get this. And it's quite awful, you can't, there's nothing you can do about it. Unless you lock yourself in a room and you really face it head on, which a lot of people do when they go cold turkey, And I compare that to ultra running as well. Because when you're in that earth locker, you're 80 miles deep, and your mind is telling you, stop, 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 stop. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can either stop and give up on yourself, or you can face it cold turkey. And sometimes people... I get over that pretty quickly. I listen to a good song, or I guess, like you said, my past has put me in a good place to tackle that. But I know I've known people that have done 50 milers, and for 37 miles of that 50 miler, they've cried. They've been in the earth locker the whole time.
Yeah.
Still, they've carried on, but they've listened to that voice for over 3/4 of the race. And it's quite incredible, really.
So what drew you to running? Why running and not take up boxing or take up another sport? What is it with running specific?
You want to know the real reason?
Yes.
It's quite funny, actually. Have you ever heard of a shop called Primark?
Yes.
Yeah, Primark, the nice, quite inexpensive shop.
It's like H&M.
Yeah, like H&M, yeah, so you can pick up trainers for like 12 quid or whatever. We went shopping during lockdown, when we just come out of that first lockdown, and I was like, we were in Primark and I seen these trainers for £12, and I thought, oh, I'll buy them. I'll take up running. The cheapest trainers you could find, and that's what started it. I just seen these trainers and thought, yeah, let's just start running. I'm very much the person that all through my life, I've tried boxing, I've tried rugby, tried football, I've tried this, I've tried playing the guitar, I've been there and done that, and never really found anything that I've stuck to and enjoyed. But when I started running around the mountains, my God, I can't explain it.
I understand. We understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's absolutely amazing. And I always tell people, as your career progresses, and you probably gather the same, people will call you a runner. I got referred to the other day as just a naturally fit guy because I run. I was like, okay, whatever. So I don't need to train every day for it. But I always refer to myself as more of an adventurer than a runner, because a runner to me is someone that runs around the track, gets paid for it, runs fast. But when I'm up in the mountain, I don't care if I have to walk up the hills. I don't care if I have to walk through the bogs and everything. I'm more of an adventurer, and that's why I love it. And I guess you get the same feeling as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I imagine the trails are amazing over with you.
Oh, yes.
They are, but we don't have much vertical, but the forest that we have is stunning. It's very, very pretty. Yes.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Now, you entered the Army and then you became a physical instructor, a leader for your career in the Army. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I joined up. I'm a qualified communication specialist. So I worked for many years flying around in the back of Chinooks on the radios, talking to the troops on the ground.
Oh, wow.
And then I done a course, a physical training instructor course. It was a 9-week course where basically they make you do 1,000 squats every day. Or you just get put through the full rigor of physical training, really. And I did. I loved it. Wasn't the fittest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy. I was still even slightly overweight going on the course. But when I finished, I was a different person. Mm-hmm. Especially now as well, my job is seeing the different people come into the gym. And when I'm taking people through physical tests and sessions, ranging from 18-year-olds up to 60-year-olds, it makes me happy to see a smile come on their face when they've achieved something, or even if it's like an extra press up, an extra sit up or something. It's like everyone has got their own goals. The 18-year-old wants to take over the world. Yeah, tip away there. The 60-year-old just wants to wake up every day. And being a PTI, I'm like kind of in the center. I'm in like the art of the camp. Mm-hmm. And everyone tells you their problems and you were expected to know answers. Mm. It's just a really fulfilling job. I enjoy it.
Well, obviously you're leading by example and they can see how much you enjoy it. And I'm sure you've shared some stories with them of what you've achieved in such a short time, because so many people can't quite wrap their head around anything over a marathon. And it's quite interesting when people start to learn more about it and then they want to know more and then they start following it and maybe they try it themselves. So you're in a great position to get more people in the sport.
Yeah, definitely. Something funny happened the other day. It's happened a few times. A bloke walked into the gym and he was obviously a runner. So we were chatting and I said, yeah, I've done a little bit of running and everything. And anyway, he starts telling me how to run a marathon. Very nice bloke. Very, very, very down to earth, lovely bloke. He was giving me awesome advice. And I'm standing there like, okay, right, just take it. Just take it. And I learned new stuff off him, you know, because I found, even though it was like a few days later, he approached me and he basically like gave me the finger because you could have told me you would run like hundreds of miles. And I was like, what would I have learned from that? If I had turned around and said, yeah, mate, the furthest I've run is 600 odd miles, the conversation would have been over, you know?
Yes.
But like I learned valuable things off him, and I think that's good, because as soon as you mention to someone that you've run hundreds of miles, the conversation's over. Mm-hmm. It takes interest out of it for people. But if you build up, like you said, if you explain about the adventure, what it does for you, distance doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. It can be 6 miles for someone. It could be 60 miles for someone. What it does to them, how it makes them feel afterwards. That's what it's all about.
You nailed it.
Yeah. It's just us nutters who run ultra distances are just peculiar.
So let's talk about some of your adventures. 200 miles, 300 miles, 600 miles across the UK, all for charities. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so my overall aim is always to spread awareness for mental health, because I struggled myself, but the charities that I've raised money for in the past and I'm raising money for now is, I find mental health could be combated from a very young age. A lot of mental health issues come from when you're children. In my example, I walked into a therapist when I think I was about 11 years old with a big Mohican. Mm-hmm. And I walked out of there and this therapist said I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was beating myself up inside. Now, if there's more support out there for these kids, I think possibly, like, even if it's one child out of 10 could get fixed, really. And then a lifelong 20 years of troubles and trying to figure out where they went wrong and all that could be put to bed in a couple of sessions. And that's why I've just tried to raise as much money as I can for these organizations, just to do my bit, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, let's get to Swiss Alps. That was the first half of Gareth's story, which was absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how you're on a fork in the road and you can go left or right, and one bad decision can really
change the direction of your entire life.
Of your whole life.
Absolutely.
And him sitting in that jail cell with attempted murder.
He was very lucky he was given a second chance.
Yeah, big time.
To make that correction.
Because it could have gone completely downhill for there.
Yeah.
More downhill than already was.
Right. Well, part 2, we're going to be getting into the details of the Swiss Alps and what he's got coming up next.
Stay tuned.